When we begin the path, but as we travel the path, it becomes straight and narrow. Blessings of light.
God bless you and blessings of light.
The way of spiritual guides. When you're up in this area of consciousness, you're coming to this area of being the divine director of your creativeness, of your knowledge, of your thoughts, of your actions, of your feelings. When you become the divine director of all the 5 lower kingdoms, when you are master of these masters. You know, when I was telling my students, I'm now at the Master of Masters level. At one point when I had reached superconscious awareness and I was demonstrating superconscious awareness, they thought I was mastering somebody else. Master of Masters is to master this body because it is a master. But it has no power of its own. It has to be animated by this individualized spirit. The emotions would never move. No thought would ever move if there was no life or spirit in it. No thought, no feeling, no knowledge, no ideas would ever have any power at all if there is no spirit in them. And if you cannot put your individualized spirit as a divine director of your mind, your emotions, your body, your consciousness, then you are bound. Unbind yourself, find out where it's at, free yourself, wake up tomorrow as master. Go into your deepest meditation till you're aware of your aware, and then come out the way you want to be. I went in as a chef and came out as a God-man. And sometimes by about 5 minutes after the meditation, that'd wear off. But I went back in again and again, and sometimes it would only last doing my classes. But a journey of 1,000 miles are taken with the first step. You've got to take the steps. What's the first step? Are you disciplining yourself? Because self-discipline must come in here. And if someone else makes a suggestion, are you a contrary and going to do something different just to be different? Or are those, well, I'll do it some other way. When I'm asking the students, when I'm going around the room, what did you experience this week? I can tell whether they're doing what they're directed to do or if they're doing something they want to do. Because they tell me all these other things. When I ask them a simple question, they want to tell me everything else that happened. They're not following completely the discipline. And it's not my discipline, it's their self-discipline that matters. I can't stand over them with a whip. I can't beat them into submission. That's not the way of God's people to do to one another. That's the way of the Roman. That's the way of the slave drivers. That's not the way of God's people. And so that first movement, don't beat on yourself. Don't criticize yourself or you will draw that. Don't beat on yourself or you'll get beaten. Don't weaken yourself or you'll be weak. It's your inner strength and power when you see clearly. It's the inner strength and power when you see clearly. And there is definite steps in spiritual science to reach spiritual consciousness. If you are working with psychic powers, you are only working with the power of your individualized soul. If you're working with spiritual powers, you're working with great beings of light and energy. Metaphysic means beyond the physical. Well, go beyond the metaphysical. Para-metaphysical. Maha-metaphysical. Beyond it. Beyond it. If you're working with psychic powers, go beyond it. Beyond it. How about the whole accumulated soul of humanity if you had that power? And who stood in that power? The great masters of light stood in that power. They had the power of that because they did one thing. They said, Om, Tit Set Om, I am that I am. They used the law of identification. They said, I am that. It's the law of identification. What are you putting after I am? I am sick and tired? That's what you've got. I'm a failure? That's what you got. Are you saying I am a success? I am in good health? When somebody comes up and asks you a question, what do? Jump all the garbage out on them? Or when you ask somebody a question, do they dump all their garbage on you? I tell them, take it to the garbage dump. Let it go. Well, what do I do with it? Let it go. Do you want to carry that around? If your body does not excrete, your body gets sick. If you do not excrete those garbage thoughts, emotions, and ideas and knowings, you are constipated in those inner planes. You are backed up. You've got things, every time you go to make a move, binding you. And you wonder why you cannot see clearly if you put other images there. Fantasies, fantasizing. There are ways to open up the imagination for creativeness through certain fantasizing ways, but the wave of reality can never be reached in fantasy, only by direct cognition, only by clairvoyance, by being clear, seeing clear, not superimposing images or forms upon it. You have an individual angel that is with you recording everything that happens to you. It's going to spend its eternity with you, recording. Can you imagine the sacrifice of love of that angel just to be with you, to record all you're doing for you, to lay at the feet of God when you enter back into the presence of God? Have you given your soul to God? Have you laid your experiences at the feet of God? Or you say, wait a minute, I got to do something about it before I can lay them there. You see. Are you laying them at the feet of the God self in you, God in you as you can? If you can't come to that level, you'll never make it out to the greater levels. The next level in the cosmic beings, the forces that guide you. You know, one of the cosmic forces that I was taught by the North American shamans was the force of gravity, and how that power can work for you. And they'd show, well, here's this great big rock, lift it up, he'd say. I remember when he told me to do that. I says, you're kidding. It was about 1,000-pound rock. And he says, well, I'll give you as long as you need. And so he went over and sat down, and I walked around the rock, and I pushed on the rock, and I sweated, and I grunted, and I groaned, and man. About an hour later, I just went over and sat down next to him. He laughed. And he gets this other smaller rock, and he takes it over there, and he goes over and he gets a board, you know, an old wooden limb, and he sticks it under the rock, and he goes, and the rock goes, moves. I said, oh, you used a rock and a board. And he says, that's wisdom. He says, that's how you work with gravity. He says, you don't try to overpower it. It's a great force. You see. Here comes the north wind. He says, how are you going to stop the north wind? I'm saying, stop! Nothing. You know what he does? He puts up a tent. Again. Some want the power to control the elementals, peace, and stop the wind. That can be done. But there are simpler things that anyone can do. And he started showing me simplicity. Keep it simple spiritually. These cosmic forces of all creation are here. The truth is a force. Love is a force. Wisdom is a force. And power in the universe. Truth, the reality, is reality everywhere. It doesn't change from one place to another. Those that are caught in multiplicity will say, well, it's relevant. But reality is reality. It's basically the same every level of consciousness. As you get deeper and deeper, now as you get into the center of the crown level, you start getting into universal pools of universal mind strata and beingness, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscience, omnibeing consciousness. You are no longer bound. You are the master self. Master of all levels of mind and consciousness, one with the masters of light, the golden masters of light, the archangels of light, the Iliums, the powers of consciousness, the powers. Who are your allies in this world? You have allies or foes depending on how you identify them. To the wise man, everything is. Wealth is enough when you need it. It's simple. It's not storing things up. It's having it at the moment you need it. The wise men always knew this. Why did Christ and all the masters say, when you go into the world, don't care about taking extra clothes, don't take all these extra things with you, just go on in the world? Wow. If you tell somebody, okay, tomorrow we're leaving, they'd be at their house packing up furniture, packing up clothes, boy, they would have such a burden. We would have to wait because they couldn't move very fast. Or maybe they got a big truck. You see. They drive to the edge of the ocean. What are they going to do? It's like the man, he started for his spiritual enlightenment. And he's going along the road. And he noticed this big hill. And he says, to get down this hill, I'll just make a wagon. So he built himself a wagon and he rode down the hill. Well, he was going across the plain there, and he says, well, gee, I may find another hill, so I better take my wagon with me. And so then he got to a stream, and he says, gee, I might find another hill, but I need this wagon, so he built a boat big enough to take him and the wagon. And he got to the other side, and he came to this big, tall hill. And here came these men. Hey, I'd like to have a boat like that. So he started building boats. And one day this young man came along and he says to the man, he starts talking to him, and the man says, I'm on the spiritual path. And he says, well, where are you going? He says, I'm going to the city of spiritual light. He says, well, what are you doing here? And he says, I'm building boats. Have you stopped along the way to build boats? To build wagons? Or are you free? Can you move? What is binding you? What is binding you in these levels as you're going to your spiritual self? What are you holding on to? Oh, well, I might need that feeling when I get there. I might need that thought when I get there. I might need that knowledge when I get there. Well, when you got here, you had nothing. You were naked. You couldn't even take care of yourself. You had to have another being wash you and feed you and clean you. When you got here, you have to surrender that way into the kingdom, because you cannot take anything you've got here, including this body, these emotions, this mind. You cannot take it. You can only take yourself. How sad it was when that rich man said, Jesus, let me come with you. And he says, sell all your things and give them to the poor. The man dropped his head and walked away. He couldn't give it up. When you're going in, can't you give up that body for a moment, those emotions for a moment, that mind for a moment? Don't you trust God to protect you? Oh, I used to have a fear something's going to get in and thrash my body around while I'm out. I used to make sure the door was locked. Then I found out spirits are not bound by matter. So then I said, I'll make some spirit vortexes. This one will go 18,000 miles per second. This one will go 18 miles an hour. And if they get caught between, they'll get ripped to pieces. Anybody tries to get in here. And I sit there all alone. I blocked every way. Nothing could get in that room. I knew how to make vortexes, and they worked. And nothing got in. And I didn't get out for 10 days. You know, fear can make you do funny things. So I did it. And then one day I was sitting there. I was sobbing, how come I'm all alone? Well, I found out God wasn't stopped by any vortexes. And he says, well, you created the vortexes. I did it. I did it. But if I let him go, is all life going to come in? The whole world will come in if I let that. Oh my God. Okay. I start disassembling vortexes. Guess what? I didn't feel alone anymore. I didn't put any more shields around to knock everything else out. Nobody even came. I was even burning patchouli candles. Say patchouli candles for serenity, for when you don't want anything else around. So I was even burning that scent, so because all the scents had a different vibration, caused different things, you see. Patchouli, if you didn't want someone to come around, put a little bit on their doorknob, they touch it, they go away. You see. Well, I had it burning in my room. Nobody came around. Didn't even get a knock on, no mail. Nobody even mailed me anything. That's the truth. There I was. It was really something. The power worked. When you transcend the body, when you reach that energy field just outside of the body, that light outside the Christos or Christ light, you reach the omnipresent white light power. This is the sustaining power. This sustains all things. This purifies all things, this power of light. When you're in it, it's really an uplifting, vibrational grace and power. We were all spinning that light last night. We just kept white fire, crystallite, white fire, crystallite, white fire, crystal light. Everybody in the room got lifted. How many was at the chanting last night? Okay. How many got lifted? See, the energies was there. Because we were calling spirit into our auras. We were letting it in. We were making the call, and for the initiate, the call compels the answer. For the seeker, they're still looking. You see, there's the lost. They're not looking for nothing. They're lost. They don't even know what to look for. They're lost. Then you got the seeker. They're looking. They look here and they look there, and they find something. Then they become disciples. Disciples are those that practice discipline. The discipline of whatever they are seeking. There's medical disciples, there's law disciples, there's spiritual disciples, there's all kinds of disciples, there's even demonic disciples. You see, you have the choice, darkness or light, every moment. So you start practicing that discipline. Practicing no discipline is a discipline. You see? The desire to be desireless is a desire. It took Buddha 6 years to realize that. He was desiring to be desireless so much, and one night after he'd fast for illumination for this desireless state, he was in this river. He was so weak he could hardly get out of the river. He pulled his strength up And he realized as he was crawling out of that river, he fell under this tree, and he realized for the first time in his life, a simple thought came to him: desire is a desire. And a desire to be desireless is a desire. And if you wish to be desireless, have no desire. And he laid there all night long for the first time in his life, seeking in the Himalayas, in the forest, every wise man he could, to find out how to reach this supreme state of bliss. And he found it in self-realization, because you will not find it from men in the forest. You will not find it in ashrams. You will not find it right here. You will only find it in you, as you, when you take and assimilate and demonstrate it, when you have self-realization, when you realize it yourself. And the only way you can realize it is start the disciplines. Once you start the disciplines, you become an initiate, because you get initiated how to use those disciplines physically, how to use them emotionally, how to use them mentally. And then pretty soon you begin to be able to adapt those things to different things. And then you get a master at adapting them. You become a master. Then you teach others. You see, a master of masters. You begin to teach others that same thing. You see. Then you become one with the powers of this planet, the planetary logos. Then you reach out, you become one with the cosmic powers, the universal powers of all beingness. But it takes the discipline to get past this body, to get past these emotions, get past these thoughts, get past your knowledge, your experiences, get past your ideas, get past yourself, to become selfless, desireless. If you were desireless out here, you'd starve to death. That's an inner state of being. A wise man knows to limit his desires. The more desires you have, the harder you are to please, and the longer it will take you to accomplish anything. And you may never accomplish it if you have too many desires that are pulling you in many different directions, one step at a time, one thing at a time. And if you want your spiritual guides, concentrate on it, put the effort there, persist until you succeed. I will persist till I succeed. I will persist till I succeed. And when you're reaching it, I am a success. I am a success. If you're just getting in your thought, you're already a success. In any level you're getting it, you're already a success. I am a success. I am beauty unfolding. I am that. Om Tetset Om. I am that. I am that. You've reached the identity of that, because you have claimed it with your words, with your feelings, with your actions, with your deeds. You are adding to these things every moment of your existence by everything you say, do, act, feel. At any level of consciousness, you are adding to the sum total of your beingness. There are many different guides. You find the one that has done it. You don't go to the one that are out there that are lost. You don't go to the seeker. You don't go to the disciple. You don't go to the initiates. You don't go to the adapts. You go to the one that's the master of it. That's when they can do it at will.